Hi, everyone. My name is Ronald Petty, and I'm going to talk about cloud-native artificial intelligence. Before we get into the details and what's going on in this area, I would like to just start with a demo. So if you want to see the demo up close, that QR code is to a zip file, which has a lab that I'm going to be working through. So you can follow along with that. You can try to look on the screen as well, but that might make it easier. And this presentation is in that zip file as well. So again, in this zip file is this lab, which is going to explain a product called CageGPT. So I'll talk a little bit about what that is, and then we'll get right into the demo, and then we'll talk more generically what cloud-native artificial intelligence actually represents. So CageGPT is a tool to act like an SRE staff. So someone who does DevOps, who manages your operations of your clusters. So specifically, as it's in the name, we're talking about Kubernetes. If you don't know what Kubernetes is, and I've talked to some of you earlier today, Kubernetes is basically a distributed operating system. So just like you have Linux for a single machine, or Windows for a single machine, or Mac for a single machine, how do you manage multiple machines and balance their resources, right? At the end of the day, that's what Kubernetes is. And so it's a beast in its own right. And so we usually, at a certain scale, have lots of people to manage it, to customize it and do all these things. And so one of those things is to do observability and to monitor it and make sure that we're doing the right things, looking for failures, and then ideally providing advice on how to fix those things. And then in the long run, of course, is to actually automate those things, right? And do these autocorrective type fixes. So what CageGPT is a tool developed originally by Alex Smith from Amazon, of which I am not part of the project. And again, I'll get more into the ecosystem in a little bit. I'm just demoing this, then explaining the ecosystem. So him and other people have developed this product, and it comes in a couple of different forms. The simplest one, which is what we'll start with, is a command line tool. You download it, you point it at your cluster, and it does an analysis. So it comes in two steps. The first is a codified analysis. And then the second step is using AI, right? And so what's the difference? So the first part is, if I'm an SRE or a DevOps type operator, I can actually write down the solution to particular errors, right? You see some error over and over again, you know you got to do steps 1, step 2, step 3 to fix it, right? So that's an example of something that can be codified. The next part is what if you don't actually understand it, right? So you could take an expert and codify hundreds of things, right? And maybe you hand that over to someone else and they actually only understand bits and pieces of that, right? So can we actually take these terse codified solutions and actually expand upon them to explain what's going on, why you would do it, and then give you a suggestion on maybe what to do? Then, of course, the dream is to automate all these things. And so that's the goal of CageGPT. It'll take codified components. So for those who do know a little bit about this world, the example we'll show is we're going to make a pod with an incorrect image. So in other words, it can't download the software, right? You have a typo, it can't find it, right? So you get a standard message with that, and the solution is go fix the label, right? To go get the right thing. So it's pretty simple. But that's the codified part. If you actually never knew that's how it worked, you wouldn't understand what that is. So you would want some better explanation on what that's actually telling us. And that's where the AI, the second step, comes in. And so there's two forms here. There's a command line version, which is the easiest, and that's what we're going to start with. And then the second form is what we're actually showing here. This is known as a Kubernetes operator. And all it really means is this: take my code that was on the command line and go run it as a daemon in the cluster itself. And now it just runs full time, all the time, and it's doing the exact same thing. It's taking data from the cluster, looking for errors, and then reports back to you what's wrong, right? And then from there, you can do what you need to do. So this material, if you do decide to go through it, starts from the very beginning. So all it assumes is you have a virtual machine, and that's it. It goes through, for those who have never done it, install Docker, install Kubernetes, explains along the way what all those things are. We're skipping all this just because we don't have time. We want to get to the CageGPT part. All right, so at this point, what we're going to do is start off with, again, installing CageGPT, the command line version, and seeing how it works. Okay. All right. So I am no magic here. I'm connected to a VM at Amazon. It's just plain old Ubuntu 2204 VM. And it may be a little hard to follow, so I'll just kind of describe what's happening. But again, it's all spelled out in that lab, so you can read it. So this is just downloading it. There's different ways to install CageGPT, but this happens to be a Debian package. This is actually going to install it. And again, it is just a command line tool. That's it, right? Nice and easy. Has built-in command line completion. So that's what I'll do here. So for those who aren't familiar with Kubernetes and a lot of these tools, they'll have built-in completion, and that's what this is doing. So then you can hit tab for all these subcommands. It's very, very useful, especially when you have lots of tools to deal with. And now we're ready. So there's already a cluster. Again, it's a little hand wavy because we didn't install it from scratch, but here is just showing that Kubernetes is out there. For those who don't know, nodes are, we'll just say that's the machines in the cluster, and then the pods are our applications, right? Just to keep it simple. And so now we're ready to ask what CageGPT thinks about our cluster. So we have nothing running, which is what the Git nodes and Git pods are telling us. And CageGPT analyze, remember, it's a two-step process. First, it's going through the codified rules. Do you find this error, this error, this error, this error, this error, and gets them all together. The second step is to put that all together, ship it off to OpenAI or to whatever AI you want, and then run the expansion on that, bring that back, and then show you. So that's what it's telling us. It says AI provider not used, so use the explain option to use it. So again, we have no errors right now because we don't have anything running. And it says right here, there's no provider. So this is table stakes. This is, we're at the very beginning here. Okay, next is we're going to break it. So now we're actually going to run a pod that will break. And again, for those who don't know what that means, we're going to run a program and we're going to screw it up is what we're saying. Okay. And right here, hopefully you can see it up there, is run broken pod. This is just the name we're giving it. And then this is the actual thing we're trying to run. So Nginx is a web server, and we're saying, give us version 1 ABC, which doesn't exist, right? And so in Kubernetes, the normal way to deal with this is you would just, manually look. And you can see right here, this is the kind of error that you would get. So the image is the glorified tarball that you download to run. It can't find it. And that's the thing we're looking for. So now with that in mind, what does CageGPT say about this? So again, remember, there's two steps. CageGPT analyze is doing the hard-coded check for these conditions and see if there's anything wrong. And that's what it found, right? So the image pull back off. Let me do it one more time. Now it says error image pull. So it's a state machine. So Kubernetes is trying it again and again. It could just be a temporary error, right? So it started off with this image pull back off there, and now it says error image pull. This is the kind of thing that it's looking for. And so now again, if we try to enable AI analysis of this error that it found, it's going to say we haven't configured it, right? So in the case of OpenAI, no big surprise. We need to put in a key to make it work, right? So we're going to do that coming up. Okay. All right. Before we do, do want to show this. Here is the code. And this is just a part of just trying to demystify some of this so you can do your own research of these tools. So this is the actual analyzer that's what is being codified. So it's a little hard to read, but basically what this is showing us is, and this is Go code for those who don't know Go, it's looking literally for Kubernetes states, right? There's no magic here. Forget about it being Go or anything like that. It's literally looking for a string that says, was the pod scheduled? If it wasn't scheduled, what is the error, right? It's very much just hard coding, looking for conditions, right? Are we crashing, right? That's a Kubernetes message. Are we running? That's a Kubernetes message. And then ultimately, there's things that it will report on CageGPT, for example, error image pool. So again, if it found that condition, considered an error, it'll report on it in the step 1 analysis. And again, the step 2 is take that analysis and ship it off to an AI provider that you configure, which is what we're going to do. Okay, so it talks about the code. Okay, so comment on this, the AI behind the scenes. We're going to do OpenAI here. This project is still fairly new. It has the ability to do local AI as well. We'll just say it was a lot more challenging to set up and keep it stable than just using OpenAI. So for this demo, we're using OpenAI, but you can get it to succeed using alternatives to that. Okay. And so all we need for OpenAI is a key. So I'm just going to show what it looks like for those who have maybe have never done it. Get an account, log in, you fund your account. That's what this is showing us here. You have to pay for how much you're willing to put up. There's limits and all those kinds of good things. And once you do that, it's pretty straightforward. You just go over here to the left, make an API key. There are some various authorization things you can do, read versus write, as far as their API is concerned. Not that featureful, but you have basic controls there. You can then make the actual API key, kind of looks like this, 128 characters or whatever it is. So you just need to copy that. And that's all you need. Now, assuming I've done that, right? We could take a look at what CageGPT thinks about this. So again, it has support for different providers. Out of the box, it's with OpenAI. That's probably going to change. I think the general consensus is people don't want that to be the default, but it happens to, because of the API standard and just ease of use, it just happens to still be that. So this may very well change to local AI at some point. But you can see there's other API support as well for their keys. Okay. All right, so here's where we actually do it. Let me put it up to the top. So this command is going to basically say, I want to use OpenAI as my backend. And because they have multiple models, that's part of the API calls. We're telling it which one we want to use. And then here's where we would put in the key. And yes, there are config files and the like to do it that way if you wish. And let me just take one of these keys that I did before. Now, if we list it again, we'll see here that we've got this set up, active OpenAI. Sorry, scrolling. Okay. Now, remember, again, two-step process. So if we do it where we don't use an AI agent, it's just doing that static analysis. And we still are informed that we're not using AI, but we do get the basic static analysis here. So now to use the AI, all you got to do again is use the explain option. And again, this will send it off. And there's the actual expanded response from OpenAI. Now, we won't have time, but you could imagine, could I take this error, something like this, and go to OpenAI myself and say, tell me what's wrong? You'll come back with something similar to this. But the point is, this is being purpose-built. It'll take advantage of all those abilities and be more focused, right? So just something to consider, right? You know, what would you do by hand versus what these tools do? So that's the basic. So again, it's looking for hundreds of issues in a cluster and giving us advice. Now, it turns out it can do more than that. So the next step is what's called CageGPT integrations. So the integrations are other tools that do static analysis. So the one we're going to demo here is called Trivy. So Trivy is a tool, had nothing to do with CageGPT. You install it. It also analyzes Kubernetes and all the things that's out there and everything you configured and tells you what you're doing right and wrong, right? Now, Trivy happens to originally come out of vulnerability scanning, but they do a bunch of other things as well. And so a little bit of overlap in some regard, but that's not the point. It does a lot more than what we've seen. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So right now, out of the box, it supports Trivy, Prometheus, and AWS. So what are these? Trivy's the security scanner. The Prometheus integration here isn't installing Prometheus. So if you're unfamiliar with Prometheus, Prometheus is a tool that scrapes in metrics, right? So the theory here is CageGPT will ask Prometheus in PromQL, which is its language, and say, hey, buddy, what's looking good and bad out here, right? So just another source of information. And then the AWS integration here actually has to do with support of EKS and the just general Amazon ecosystem for Kubernetes type tooling. Okay, so here we'll activate it. Pretty simple. Again, it's built in. It didn't have to do anything else. This, no smoke and mirrors here. This has been built in. And what it's doing is it's going to basically to Trivy's website, downloading it, kicks it off. And in general, it's just Trivy if you had installed it yourself, right? They took the next step and to talk to it, to get this information, and then to send it to your AI provider. All right, so that takes a moment, and we'll let this run for just a second. So Trivy is doing its thing. Trivy is running and it's scanning the cluster, looking for problems. And so you're going to see things succeed, things fail. This is all standard tooling as far as cloud native technology is concerned. So this takes a minute because you could probably guess there is lots of problems in the world to scan for. And close. All right, might be far enough. Let's see if this worked. Of course it worked. All right, before we see the results, one more part here, integration. So CageGPT has categories of those static analysis. So it just helps us because, just like any kind of QA or unit testing process, you may not want to do all the tests all the time. So they call them filters. And you can see here, there's ones that are on, which are active, and the ones that are off. Just this is the subset that they've decided. And then you can see here, when we added Trivy, it added these ones as well. And so again, Trivy's kind of claim to fame is a vulnerability scanner, right? So you can basically turn Trivy on and off. Here it's going to be on just because that's the default behavior. Okay, again, back to the two-step analysis. You don't have to do it as two steps. I'm just doing it to be pedantic. Again, static analysis, we saw before it was just a label was missing. But now you can see, there's 11 things now, and these new ones are from Trivy. So CageGPT went to Trivy and said, hey, what was your analysis, right? So this is Trivy output, basically. The next step is, can we send it to the AI provider, get some kind of expansion on that? So there's more to package up into format and to deal with. So this is going off to OpenAI. And you can see here, I mean, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines of stuff. But the point being is so I can find one here. Here's a config issue, describes it, gives a solution, right? So we're not going to worry about any particular problem, but that's the idea. And so again, it's meant to, this isn't auto ML in a sense where it's fully automated, but it's getting there. And that's really the goal, right? Can we start with the cookie cutter things, the hard coded things, and start to automate that? And that's where this is leading. Okay. We have 10 minutes left. So I'm just going to talk for a minute what is left in here if you choose to do it versus showing it, because we'll go a little faster. And that's the second way to install this. So what we've seen is a command line tool sitting out of the cluster. It's talking to Kubernetes to find things. It's talking to Trivy to get information. This next approach is called Kubernetes operator. And for those who don't know what that means, it means make it into a server and then run it forever, right? Just install it in Kubernetes. It just becomes a program that continuously runs. And if you do that, instead of us doing that CageGPT analyze to get the results, we do a different command, and I'll just show you what that command is. A lot of detail just explaining what's going on. And then, here it is. So once it's running, instead of saying CageGPT, we can actually just use regular Kubernetes. Oh man, sorry, double click there. We can use kubectl. So that's the standard command line tool for Kubernetes. And you can see here that it's CageGPT has been integrated with it. And now there's a new type called a result, which you can see and get the same response. So now we can automate it into your CI pipelines, your monitoring tools, right? And that's the idea here. Okay. All right. So again, the next step, of course, would be is instead of using OpenAI to do it with local AI. But again, that's a bit of a beast at the moment. All right. So going back to the presentation, a couple slides here, and then we'll do questions. All right. So what is cloud native artificial intelligence? So I am part of a volunteer effort at the Cloud Native Compute Foundation. And we have a working group. So it's the CNCF AI working group. And one of the things goals of the group is to kind of figure out what is going on with Kubernetes, again, which is this distributed scheduler, and artificial intelligence in general, right? So there's kind of two camps. There are people who want to use Kubernetes to host things like their own open AI, right? And then there is things like CageGPT, which is the other side, where we're actually using AI to make Kubernetes better, right? So it's the two ships in the night kind of passing each other. And so we're still working on what does it mean? What's the ecosystem? AI is a big world. You've got entire tool chains like your Databricks. You've got entire other open source things like the Apache projects, right? All the DAG tools, those things. So where does this fit in? So cloud native artificial intelligence is an extension of cloud native. What is cloud native? There is an official definition, just highlighted here in purple here. The main part here, cloud native tech empowers organizations to build and run scalable applications in modern dynamic environments. This is Kubernetes, right? We don't have much time. We'll just say it. This is Kubernetes. It's the system of choice that we're building around. It's not going to be used for all things AI. It's not even used for all things web serving, but there's a huge ecosystem around it. AI, there's lots of ways to describe what AI is, right? So intelligent machines, we'll just leave it at that. So what's the combinations of these things? And so the point being is can we use cloud native tooling to make AI easier, right? And so what is that? What does it mean? How do we do that? So you could read about it. This white paper just came out 2 weeks ago at KubeCon in Paris, one of the authors. And basically, we tried to boil the ocean on what is going on in Kubernetes and the ecosystem. We partnered with lots of people and efforts from the cloud native side to hardware engineering and Intel and NVIDIA, and try to boil that ocean, like what is going on, right? We even though Kubernetes lives out of the CNCF, there's still plenty going on outside of there, right? And so we're trying to capture that in this white paper. So take a look at that. The URL is nice and long, and they're in the deck. Lots of problems to be solved. So Kubernetes and cloud native has problems around scaling, right? That's typically where most people run into problems. AI does not help that, right? So if you're trying to scale AI solutions, you've got two complex things coming together, right? And so it's not solved today, but people are working on solutions to that aspect of scaling and making it easy to host these kinds of we'll skip there's other slides here. We're just going to go right to the end. What could you do to learn more about this? So first and foremost, you can join the CNCF. You could join the AI working group. We need all kinds of people. We need people from just learning how to use these tools because they'll have a certain perspective. We need people who are building the tools, right? So it's a whole community. So there's plenty of room for everybody. So the more we can get in there, different views, the better. There's other, as it mentions here, there's other groups you could learn with as well. Of course, we've got the AI user group. Happy to be here. But there's plenty of tools out there you can volunteer and join. So there's plenty to do in the cloud native space. But again, if you have any questions, please ask me. I am in your camp. Yeah. So Kubernetes, kind of said at the beginning, is a beast. It's easy to go wrong right out of the gate with the various abstractions. So will something like CageGPT maybe even help that, right? Start to show like, hey, it's duplicative in some controls and abstractions. Can we remove that? I would hope so. It's not there today, right? Because it is, like you say, it's codified, right? And then we're expanding. So it's early days on that. Will it get to semantic analysis and go from there? I hope so. I don't think we're there yet, but I do hope so. The two hot items, it's AI, of course, and security and where they overlap. That's, there's plenty of other things going on, medical and other things. But I will say when it comes to automation, security is really something that can be automated. So if you're looking for projects or you're looking for things to build on, security is definitely an area that's going to keep getting a lot of eyeballs. So maybe paraphrase, we have basic codified analysis, and then we're just expanding on it. What about a deeper meta-analysis between all these issues? Maybe there's a bigger issue that's causing all these issues, right? It's not there yet, but that is being discussed. That's kind of that next level of reasoning. And I would argue that's probably true of most AI tools. The reasoning aspects are not there yet, right? But yeah, great observation. It's not there yet, but that's something that needs to happen. CageGPT, not today, but as you say, people are considering it. Yes.